Hello, sports fans, sports collectors, and all hobbyists. Welcome to the Card King Sports and Variety Show. I am your host, the Catman, Brian Cataquet, a.k.a. the Card King. We are live on ABC's KMET 1490 AM.com, your number one spot right here for news and talk on the West Coast. I thank everyone for tuning in this morning. On the telephone line, I welcome to the program a former Major League Baseball pitcher who played for the 1987 Texas Rangers and the 1990 Montreal Expos. I welcome him, Bob Malloy. Bob, Brian C., thanks for coming on.
Hey, Brian. Happy to be here.
My pleasure, Bob. So, Bob, I figure we start 1986 MLB draft year, and just reading on your career, you had no idea what to expect that year, right? Which organization would choose you? Where were you heading? Talk about that draft year experience.
All right. Well, I can probably start the year before, because the Boston Red Sox had been following me pretty closely at the University of Virginia, and I had a pretty good career, and they wanted to draft me in the 6th round and pay me second round money, and my arm was hurting me, my shoulder. And so when draft day came around in 85, they were ready to pull the trigger and do it. And I basically said, no, my arm's hurting me. I'm going to go back to school, get my degree, and kind of go from there. And over the summer, I rehabbed my arm and felt really good going into 1986, and started the year as the number one pitcher. Had a good first game, and then my second game was against Kevin Brown, who ended up being drafted by the Rangers, having a really good career at Georgia Tech. And I actually, bases were loaded, maybe in the 3rd or 4th inning. I was pitching, and it was kind of wet out, a little bit wet outside, and so I threw a fastball to a guy named Jeff DeStasio, who ended up being the home run king of the ACC that year. He hit a ball off my shin. It bounced over my head. I turned, saw it, took a couple of steps, tried to push off the wet grass, and my fib just snapped. So at that point, I had sitting there on the ground with a broken leg. Ended up, they didn't think that it was an emergency when they made the call in, and it took about 45 minutes to get to the hospital, and had surgery. Ended up Dick Schultz, he was the main guy at the University of Virginia. He sent his plane down to get me, and flew back up to the University of Virginia, went to the hospital there, and they basically said, if you wake up whenever we do this surgery and there's a bandage on your right leg, because this happened to my left, that means that your leg is still swollen too much, that we can't just sew it up. They ended up, prior to that, kind of doing what's called a fasciotomy and just kind of let everything drain. And when I woke up, there was a bandage on my right leg. Everything was too swollen, and so kind of looks like I have a shark bite on my my lower left leg. But that's and it's interesting anyway. Oakland Athletics are the ones that drafted me, I think like in the 19th round in 85, and I said I wouldn't go. And then in 86, even with the broken leg, the Texas Rangers decided to kind of take a chance and drafted me, I think, in like the 21st round. So that's how, that's kind of a long-winded way of saying that the drafting was kind of a unique situation for me.
And Bob, it's pretty remarkable how you overcame this, this injury. Now, it's a fact. Tell me if this is true. You're Prince William County, Virginia's first major leaguer ever?
That's what I hear. Yeah. Yep.
I mean that's incredible. Now, it is a fact, as you mentioned, the Oakland A's chose you, and then so you went on to the Texas Rangers. Can you talk about the process on how that signing took place and your first appearance in the minor leagues?
Yeah. So I ended up I was in a full-length leg cast for 5 months after this happened, just on crutches the whole time. And I ended up moving down to Texas. My mother was down here, and I kind of lived with her for a little bit. She helped out. I ended up getting a job with Cigna Insurance, and kind of basically thought that I would never play baseball again. And so during that time, and it was really only 3 months that I was there, I went to Arlington Stadium where the Rangers played just about every day and started doing some rehab. I just thought, you know what? I'm not meant for a desk job, and if I could get back to playing baseball, I wanted to give it a shot. So I ended up, like I said, going to Arlington Stadium just about every day, working out, trying to rehab my arm because, I didn't want it to get back to the point where it was in 85. I thought this would be a great way to rehab it. And so I got to know Tom House, the pitching coach. I got to know a lot of the players. And I asked him if I could go to Instructional League that year. And Instructional League, they basically will send a lot of their prospects there, and it's in October and November. This happened in, I think, March of 85 or 86, and I ended up actually convincing them that if I was out of the cast and I could jog by the time October came around, that they would send me to Instructional League. And I ended up going down there, and basically when everyone was doing their thing, I was kind of jogging in the outfield, just trying to get the strength back in my leg. And by the time the Instructional League ended, they put me in a game for 1 inning, and it was funny. I ended up throwing a 3-pitch inning, the only one I think I've ever thrown in my life. And basically that's where it ended. Instructional League ended, and they said, hey, just keep rehabbing, and we'll see you at spring training next year.
And Bob, that's, what's remarkable is, even with your leg severely damaged, teams still remained interested in you.
Well, yeah, I mean, that was, that definitely was amazing to me too. I mean, I'm a very overused word is potential, and I had pitched and done pretty well at the University of Virginia, and the fact that they still took a chance. I think it was low enough draft spot that it was kind of a throwaway pick, and they were like, "Hey, we got nothing to lose." This guy was going to go high at one point. We'll see. I mean, if he's able to come back from his leg, maybe we got something. So.
And from what I understand, you generated some fanfare, the day the Texas Rangers selected you because, basically because of your makeup and your past success, like you mentioned, at the university.
Well, I mean, I don't know, how much that played into, either getting to the big leagues faster or whatever. But I mean, I actually, by the time I went to spring training the next year, I had a really good spring training. And, I thought that because I was working with the AA team in spring training, so you know how that works. It's, the good AAA players generally back in the day would go up and be with the big league team in spring training. And then, you had the really good AA players would bump up to AAA, and it just kind of did that all the way down the line. And, I did really well, and I'm thinking, hey man, I'm gonna break with the AA team, and I'm on my way. Well, out of spring training, they basically said, hey, we want you to have success, so we're going to send you to the lowest A-ball team, or lowest A-ball league in the country, the South Atlantic League, and, we were going to send you with a bunch of these, guys that we feel like they're prospects, but we're going to go ahead and let you go there, have some success, and then we'll just kind of revisit it, sometime in the middle of the year. So, I mean, I would have thought, man, doing as well as I'm doing, man, I'm going to break with a higher team. But, I understood it. I definitely understood the fact that I hadn't played in, like a year and was hurt, and so they just wanted me to get some good experience.
Well, you really stood out in 1987 playing for the Gastonia team. I mean, you went 5-0 that year. Now, that's the team that had Juan Gonzalez, right? And it was Sosa on that team as well?
Yeah. Sammy Sosa, Dean Palmer, third base, a bunch of pitchers. I think The Athletic did an article on that team had 10 players make it to the big leagues at some point or, in their career. But that was an interesting team. I mean, the player, there was a lot of strikeouts, there were a lot of errors, but it just seemed like when I pitched, everything came together. Everyone played well, strong hits together, scored runs, and so I mean, I couldn't complain. That wasn't the case with every pitcher that was down there, but there were a lot of really, really good players on that team, but they just weren't refined yet.
Yeah, like I said, that year you were undefeated. You had like 66 strikeouts, I believe, and playing for the Gastonia. And then 88, you playing for Tulsa. Talk about that. How was that team, Tulsa?
Well, so the Tulsa team in 88, I ended up, I made it to the big leagues that first year and was very wild in the strike zone, didn't really know how to pitch. just throwing the ball in an area instead of a specific spot. And by the time '88 rolled around, they started using me as a long reliever. And I had never done that before. I pitched. I'd always been a starter, and it's interesting how your mindset changes whenever you go to a different role. And I think in my tops at 89 miles an hour when I was a starter, that was probably, hey, I need to conserve. I need to make allow me to kind of get into later innings by not throwing as hard. And then I became a reliever, and all of a sudden, my mindset changed, and I went from throwing, 89 to, hitting 95 at points, and, had pretty much, some really good success in '88 at Tulsa, and the Montreal Expos came in and secured me in the midwinter draft, and that's how I ended up over with the Expos.
We're talking with Bob Malloy, pitcher for the 1987 Rangers and Montreal Expos of the 1990 team. He's with us on the telephone line. So, Bob, 87, like you mentioned, you make it to the big leagues, and that's the 87 Rangers. That's when I think of the 87 Rangers, I think about the great Charlie Huff, Steve Howe, Bobby Witt, etc. How were those teammates? Did you get along with the team?
Yeah, I mean, it was so. I didn't go to spring training that year with the big league team, and so I didn't get to meet anybody. I didn't really know anyone that well. I was able to meet them when I was rehabbing, but not much. There wasn't a whole lot of interaction, but got to know them. They knew my face, but once I made it up there, I mean, they were all as nice as can be. I had two starts when Bobby Witt went down, and I think they knew that I wasn't going to just stay there and finish the rest of the year at the big league level, and so the younger guys, the guys that were just trying to make a name for themselves. I got to know them a little bit more than obviously the established guys, but they're all really nice. I mean, Jeff Kunkel is who I roomed with. He's a great guy. So yeah, there wasn't a whole lot of interaction at that time. I kind of stayed to myself just because I did feel a little bit like a fish out of water. So
now when you heard you were heading to Montreal, your reaction at that time, was it positive? Was it negative? You were heading out to Canada.
So it was positive. I mean, whether it was Canada or anywhere, I think a change was needed at that time for me. And they always had a great success with pitching. And so, when Dan Duquette, he called and told me, hey, we drafted you and we want to utilize you as a reliever. That's the reason why we got you over. Not as a starter, but as a reliever. I was excited. I was having success being a reliever, and then I was happy to jump on with them and see what I was, going to be able to do in that role.
You're right, Bob. And I'm looking at the roster for the 1990 Expos. I mean, they had a lot of pitchers. Even Oil Can Boyd, who was on this show, was on the squad. Yeah,
no, I know. Yeah, and I remember interacting with him and, being there in games and kind of, watching how, they like to rib players of the other team. And, Dennis Martinez, Oil Can Boyd, just some
Kevin
really
Gross, Gardner,
Tim Burke. Some really, really good pitchers on that team.
A lot of pitchers, and also some of the hitters. Tim Raines, Alou was on the squad. Larry Walker. These are iconic names in baseball in today's world.
Oh, Galarraga, Delino DeShields. Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was. Again, I did not go to spring training with those guys, and I didn't know anybody on that team when I got called up to pitch for the Expos. I had no idea about. I just kind of said, watch these players forever. Tim Wallach, and I'm like, wow, pretty amazing that they're sitting next to me in the dugout. So.
But, you have to admit, though, one of the hardest things to do, I've been told by so many athletes, is to make it to the pro league. And, you made it to the big stage.
Well, timing is everything, just you doing extremely well and somebody, unfortunately, having an injury or something. And that's what happened both times. I was doing really well with the Rangers, even though I was in low A ball, there was really no one that was doing great throughout the system. And Bobby Witt gets hurt. And I think that, the fact that I actually worked out at the stadium was huge. And they knew that I think they knew that I could handle being around that situation. And then, when it came to the Montreal Expos, Tim Burke had I think a stress fracture or something. And I was pitching really well at the time, and that's how I ended up getting a call up to the Expos.
And I have a couple of minutes left, Bob. I want to ask you, out of all the minor league coaches and managers you played with, anyone stands out in your mind, who helped you through the process, who was instrumental in your career?
Oh, yeah. So the guy that I probably learned more from was Rusty Gerhardt and Chino Catahia, and that's going all the way back to Gastonia. Rusty Gerhardt was pitching coach, and Chino was the manager, and just, I think acclimating me to the professional side of things, and I have a fond space for both those guys. And then, when I went over to the Expos, Joe Kerrigan, he was a great guy, pitching coach that ended up going up to the big leagues for a lot of years and being pitching coach there. He was somebody that I really respect, and I think I learned a lot from.
And, from your experience, Bob, what is it that you need to have, during your minor league years, the attribute that you need to have to make it to the big league team? Because some people, they just rot in the minor leagues. Yeah. So, just an open mind to keep learning. There's some guys that I think they know it all, aren't willing to make adjustments. I by the time that I got called up with the Expos, I feel like it was my time. I had learned how to pitch. I knew kind of my strengths. I was pitching to my strengths. And, unfortunately, the day that I got called up, I felt something in my shoulder. And,
unfortunately, when I went up there, instead of throwing the 95 that I was throwing, I probably was throwing 82. And, at that point, I wasn't willing to say, you know what, I'm kind of hurt. I don't want to go up. Let me just stay here and not take this, this opportunity. And, I did okay when I went up there, but I feel like, it's being willing to, make adjustments, and that's kind of what got me up to the big leagues, because the first time I made it up, it was with a really good tight curveball. I lost the feel for that, and then I developed a really nice changeup that got me to the big leagues the second time. So.
Well, I can honestly say, it's a fact that your name will always be cemented in Prince William County's, as the first major leaguer to ever make it to the big game.
No, that's true. That's absolutely true. Yep.
So listen, I appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, you bet. No, this was fun. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Bob Malloy of the 87 Rangers Montreal Expos of the 1990 Major League Baseball organization. Until next week, happy collecting to all.